From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line.
Good morning, everyone. Nick Barris here. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. It is a Wednesday, and want to have, I think, you share in our conversation this morning. However you feel about guns, you know, the debate. There have been a lot of stories lately here in Tennessee, nationwide, but especially locally here in Nashville. You've heard about the issue regarding gun shows at the fairgrounds and what that all is about. And we're going to get into the very latest on that, but also the bigger picture as to why something like that's happening. Questions being raised about guns and gun safety and gun regulation as we have more of these tragic shootings, all of that. That's why periodically we like to have our fine guest this morning to talk about it from a certain point of view, of course, and that would be John Harris. Guess what John's point of view is? All right, if you're not exactly sure about it, he's with the Tennessee Firearms Association, right? Is that right?
That's correct.
That's
I'm the executive director.
The executive director.
2 decades now.
Good to have you on, John.
Thank you very much.
You. And so, yes, he is I think you would say, a strong advocate for the Second Amendment and gun ownership in responsible hands. And I'm not sure exactly where to start, except I think we will with what's happening locally here. The latest, of course, is it looks like the Metro Council is going to postpone really discussing this issue about the ban on gun shows at the fairgrounds till the new year. So in the meantime, if there were any scheduled for the rest of the year, will they happen?
Well, first, I don't think there are any scheduled.
Okay, I didn't know if there were.
Metro Legal, as I understand it, has issued sort of a preliminary, not necessarily an opinion, but has expressed some concern that because of the contracts that were out there, that Metro could not cancel the shows.
Okay,
they had to honor and typically what happens in my experience is when these gun show promoters, they will typically rent the spaces almost in some instances 2 years in advance, because they have big shows on a regular basis, and if they don't get them rented, reserved, they can have problems. My understanding is the shows all the way through 16 are back on at this point.
All back on. And had that not been the case, and I don't know, maybe this is something I've missed, were some of these gun show organizers going to sue? Were they going to file a lawsuit?
Absolutely. And
is there one still coming? Is a lawsuit coming, or is this something they're looking at? Should these contracts, in their opinion, be breached?
I think the gun show operators, the promoters, really don't have a viable choice but to look at some type of suit against Metro if they terminate the existing contracts, which could go, like I said, up through 2017. Now, you know what happens after that? They may look, frankly, as Buck Dozier said, at taking the gun shows to Hendersonville or Mount Juliet or Williamson County, someplace just outside of the Davidson County circle, which means they'll go and do fine. But the Metro Fair will lose about $300,000 a year in revenue that they generate off of these gun show promoters.
If you would, do me this favor and kind of describe for me the difference between perhaps me going to a gun show and finding a weapon and purchasing it there. And is there any different procedure if I buy that same weapon at Walmart?
No.
Okay, so, you know, play devil's advocate here, if you would, just for a moment. The way I understand it, what are the concerns about the gun shows? And then you can explain them away if you'd like, as you have in the past, in your opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but it seems like they're worried about some of the sales occurring, not the proper procedures being taken, and that people could buy guns there more easy, that maybe some folks who shouldn't have them, that couldn't get them through, say, an established store like Walmart.
Okay. One issue is we hear this terminology that there's a gun show loophole.
Okay.
And what that really is a reference to is what's called the casual sale exception, and I'll really talk about that separately. But in terms of going to a Walmart versus a gun show, the licensed gun dealers have to go through the exact same background checks and procedures and record-keeping requirements at a gun show that they go to at their own, store.
Okay.
One difference is ATF is and law enforcement is almost always at the gun shows. So they can monitor stuff, walk around, see what's going on.
They're checking it out.
Right. And that's not necessarily true if you go to a Walmart or just a regular retail store. They come in once a year. The issue really with the gun shows seems to be what's called the loophole, is the casual sell exception. And federal law since 1968 has allowed an individual who's not in the business, they're not a dealer, to trade personal items, firearms, without having to go through a background check. You don't have to take it to a dealer and sell through a dealer. You can sell just like you could a car, person to person.
Okay.
Now, when they do that, both state and federal law require that the person making the sale not sell to someone that they know or reasonably should know is prohibited from purchasing a gun. So you can't sell to a child. You can't sell.
Meaning if it's obvious.
Yeah, some of it's obvious, some of it isn't.
Okay.
But those restrictions apply, and there's pretty severe penalties. It's a federal felony for the seller to violate that standard. It's also a federal felony for the buyer if they are prohibited from purchasing, to buy one individually like that and not disclose that they're prohibited. So that rule, that casual sale rule, applies at a yard sale, at an estate sale, at a private auction. If you do it through, I don't think Craigslist allows it anymore, but you know, some type of newspaper. Those same rules apply there as apply at the gun show.
Okay.
To someone that's just walking around, you know, trying to sell a personal gun.
For instance, and that's a gun show, you say. Let's just say after today's show, I came out to the back lot here with you, and I said I wanted to buy a weapon from you, and you had brought one in.
Right.
And I paid you for the gun.
Right.
Here's the money, you give me the gun. End of story?
Well, as long as I'm comfortable that you're not prohibited.
Okay.
And so what the Tennessee Firearms Association recommends to people is, if you go to a dealer, if you're wanting to sell a personal gun, if you're wanting to buy one of my guns,
yeah, like anything else,
there's a form that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms publishes for dealers called a 4473. You can get it off the internet, and it asks all the questions of who you are, your identifying information, your age, and then all the questions like, have you ever been dishonorably discharged? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? It goes through all of them. And they're yes/no questions. And we tell private individuals, if you want to be safe, if you want to make sure you don't violate the law when you sell a gun privately, get that form, just ask your buyer to fill it out. Then at least you've asked the questions. They may lie to you, but at least you've asked the questions.
Yeah.
And then that's a good record for them to keep, and that's a record that the law enforcement, if that gun shows up in a crime, could look at.
You know, when this story came about and we you know, realized that they had voted to do what they did with the gun shows, kind of took me by surprise from the sense that, not that they did something like that. If you choose to vote that way, it was like, was there a flashpoint there? Was there something that grabbed their attention to make that happen now? Had there been an incident recently where a gun purchased at that gun show shot someone just off the fairgrounds property or something? There hadn't been. So it kind of, you know, was like, all right, I'm just wondering, what was the genesis of this? You know, where did it come about? And, you know, we then hear after the fact that there was some studies done back from out of New York where they were following gun shows to see where guns came from, you know, they were cracking down. I think Bloomberg
did that report, yeah.
Set that up. So, I mean, was there more to it than that? I'm just, is it...
You know, the Bloomberg excuse didn't even surface until after the vote, is my understanding. It was not discussed. From the news reporters that I've talked to that were at the meeting,
okay,
that was not even discussed or brought up as a reason to do it.
Okay.
And there was no recent event that was brought up as a reason to do it. The only thing that's relatively recent that would have been sort of maybe even potentially a motivator was that Megan Barry became mayor. She's been one when she was on the council that did not support Second Amendment topics. She's the person that appoints everybody to the fair board. And certainly the people that are there that like being there have an incentive to make her happy. But I don't know that there is a causal connection. All I know is they did it shortly after she was sworn in.
Now, she did not long afterwards, after the reaction to it, to instruct Metro Legal to look into whether or not this was appropriate to do.
Right. Absolutely. She did do that. There's no doubt about it. What we don't know is, was that a genuine request or was that just a choreographed move?
So from where you sit, do you think this is just another attack on guns? I
think it is in a manner, because it doesn't stop gun shows, for example, if they want to occur at Opryland on private property. What it is it's an attack not only on the concept of gun shows, but gun owners, by saying, even if you're a Metro taxpayer and you help support the fairgrounds, what you like to do, the lawful commerce that you want to pursue, we're not going to let you do it at the fairgrounds. You know, they're not stopping the flea markets, and certainly guns trade at the flea markets, or can. They're not stopping the hunting classics. They're not stopping the boat and fish shows. They're not stopping anything else that's otherwise legal conduct. They've sort of singled out this one issue. And it's peculiar because this one topic is one of the most politically charged topics that there are, and certainly one that our mayor has a historical history of opposing.
All right, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we're going to take some phone calls, get more into that, and more on some of these other issues that have come up surrounding guns, the potential for gun regulation, some of the shootings, and your take on all of that. The number 737-7587. If you're on hold, Joe, Paul, and others, stay there. We'll get to you, but we do have some lines open too. John Harris, answer your questions about the law and guns and regulation right after this. Stay with us.